The sky went black at 2 in the afternoon. Not gradually, the way a storm builds. It just went black, like someone switched the sun off. You were at the market, in the forum, at your work. It doesn't matter where you were in Pompeii, that August afternoon in 79 AD, you were there, and the sky went black. Vesuvius started erupting around noon, but the first phase was deceptive in a way that costs lives. A column of ash and pumice rose more than 20 miles into the air, above the clouds, above anything you'd ever seen. The column looked solid. It looked far away. So many people stayed. You stayed. 20,000 people lived in Pompeii. Most were able to flee in the first hours, while the eruption column was still rising vertically and the fallout was survivable. But you didn't go. Maybe you had animals to collect. Maybe your family was scattered. Maybe you simply couldn't believe it. The way it's impossible to believe when the threat looks distant and your home is right here. The pumice stones began falling around 1 in the afternoon. It wasn't rain, it was bombardment. White and gray rocks the size of walnuts raining from the dark sky at speeds that would hurt if they hit you directly. You went inside. Everyone went inside. The rooftops of Pompeii were not built for this kind of weight. Pre-send, some were already giving way. You could hear it in the blocks around you. The sound of structures buckling under the weight that just kept accumulating. 4 inches of pumice, 12 inches. The street surface disappeared. You were walking on volcanic material. Every additional inch that fell was more weight on the rooftops. More structures collapsing. More voices of panic coming from further away and then going quiet. Pliny the Younger was at Misenum, 18 miles away, when he saw the eruption begin. He was 17 years old and had a scientist's eye. He observed everything and later wrote the only 2 first-hand eyewitness accounts of the eruption that survived to the present day. He described the column as looking like a pine tree, tall trunk branching into a canopy at the top. He described the sea retreating from the shoreline as if being pulled back. He described the darkness coming from Vesuvius as thicker than any night, more oppressive than any eclipse. You were inside that darkness. The eruption continued through the night, the pumice accumulating and accumulating. You had candles. You had some food. You stayed awake listening to the weight of the stones on the roof and praying the structure would hold. At some point, exhausted, you fell asleep. You shouldn't have slept. But the human body can't sustain absolute terror indefinitely. The body negotiates. You slept. At around 2 in the morning, on August 25th, the eruption column collapsed for the first time. When a Plinian eruption column collapses, the energy that was driving it upward redirects laterally into what are called pyroclastic surges and flows. A wave of superheated gas, ash, and volcanic fragments moving at nearly 200 miles per hour along the ground surface. The temperature inside a pyroclastic surge can reach 570 degrees Fahrenheit. The first surge at 2 in the morning hit Herculaneum, the city closest to the volcano, less than 8 miles away. Everyone still in Herculaneum died in seconds. The temperature superheated their bodies instantaneously. Death from heat arrives before suffocation at those temperatures. The archaeologists who excavated Herculaneum centuries later found the bodies in positions that were not positions of falling. They were positions of instantaneous death. Pompeii is 6 miles further. The first surges didn't reach that far. But you felt something, a shift in air pressure, maybe. A heat that shouldn't be there in the middle of the night. You woke up. This was when you should have left, by 6 in the morning. After 6 hours of heavy pumice deposition, the level of volcanic material in the streets and on the rooftops of Pompeii had reached nearly 6 feet deep, almost 2 full meters. Opening an inward swinging door was impossible. The material piled outside blocked it. Outward swinging doors could still work if they weren't buried. Second-floor windows were an option. You tried. The ash had a different texture than the pumice. Finer, denser. It was arriving now in growing quantities. Each breath was a problem. The fine ash particles penetrated the lungs in a way the larger pumice stones didn't. You had cloth over your mouth. Everyone did. But cloth only filters what cloth filters. The second major column collapse happened around 6:30 in the morning. This surge had enough energy to reach Pompeii, and it did. You felt the heat first. A wave of heat with no specific direction. It came from everywhere. It came from the air itself. Then the wind. A wind unlike any wind, because it came loaded with solid material at speeds that made each particle a projectile. And then the darkness deepened in a way darkness is not supposed to be able to deepen. Death by pyroclastic surge at lower intensity, the kind that struck Pompeii, is, according to recent research, relatively quick. A group of Italian researchers published studies between 2018 and 2020 that analyzed skulls and bones recovered from Pompeii and concluded that the temperatures in the bodies were high enough to vaporize brain fluid, cause skull expansion from internal pressure, and kill in a fraction of a second, not minutes. A fraction of a second. Bodies of Pompeii were preserved because the position of death was recorded in the ash layer before any movement could occur afterward. The plaster casts developed by archaeologists Giuseppe Fiorelli in 1863 were made from the voids that bodies left in the ash layers after the organic material decomposed over centuries. Each cast is a photograph of a final moment. A family, a man, a woman, a child, bound together in a room on the second floor of a house in central Pompeii. Embraced DNA research published in 2022 indicated that two of the bodies were blood relatives. The family had stayed together until the end. They had climbed to the second floor when the material on the ground floor got too deep. They had waited together. Archaeologists called this group the family of the House of the Golden Bracelet. The woman was wearing gold jewelry. The man was on his back with his arm over her. The child was between them. The cast position is preserved. It is in the National Archaeological Museum in Naples. Vesuvius has erupted multiple times since 79 AD in 1844. In 1905, in 1944, during World War II, Allied bombing and volcanic eruptions simultaneously. Its last eruption is considered technically dormant but not extinct. The difference between dormant and extinct is that dormant can wake up. Geologists estimate that the greater Naples metropolitan area, which includes approximately 3 million people, is within the impact zone of a major eruption. The morning of August 25th in the year 1709 ended. The eruption concluded on August 26th or 27th. Estimates vary. When the material settled, Pompeii had disappeared completely under 12 to 20 feet of ash and pumice, buried for 1,600 years. It was rediscovered in 1748 when workers building a canal aqueduct broke through painted walls and mosaics. Approximately 2,000 bodies have been found in Pompeii to date. Historical estimates suggest 2,000 to 3,000 people died in the city during the eruption. The rest of the population of 20,000 had managed to flee. You didn't, but your story was preserved. Not in your name, quartz in the cast your body left in the ash that stayed. That's what Pompeii did with time. It stopped time and held the moment. And 2,000 years later, the moment is still there. If this video puts you under a sky that went black in August, subscribe. We tell the moments that time tried to bury and couldn't quite manage.